Yeah, it's working fantastic. Just a big welcome to Heather Waugh today, who's going to lead our special wellbeing event. You can't be what you can't see. I did a typo in the original brief of this, which Heather picked me up on, so we got it right in the end. For me, Heather's truly inspirational. She's won loads of different awards, but it's actually Scotland's only woman freight train driver, and is for me a fabulous pioneer and role model. And I think it's such a responsible job that you have, Heather. But people don't want to hear from me; they want to hear from you. So the floor is yours.
I'm really concerned at that build up, because that's we're going to go downhill really fast here. So
No,
I've got some slides to share, so you can let me know if this let's see if this works.
Yeah, we can see a slide.
So is that up on your screen?
Yeah, it's Network Rail Wellbeing Event.
Fantastic. Right, that's us off to good start. Remember, I'm a train driver. I'm not used to this kind of stuff. So the first thing I really want to stress, before I even start, is that I'm not an expert in any of the areas that I'm going to cover today. And that often makes me feel quite unqualified to do things like that. But something that I feel very passionate about is for people to share experiences and to listen to each other. And that's why I think the sessions that John runs are so important, because I think changing our work environments and our industries for the better is the responsibility of us all. And I say that as somebody that, for my sins, is now a union rep as well. So I really, truly believe that it's in all of our hands to make those changes. So today I'm going to share a bit about my journey. And I've kind of discovered what diversity means to me, and what it brings when you look beyond the box ticking and the graphs that I sometimes think we're too quick to do. I want to highlight what I think we're doing well as an industry in my experience, and what we're still getting wrong. And also I'd like to speak a little bit about my passion for mental health, and specifically men's mental health. And the thing that underpins all of this for me is what you can achieve when you take the time to really, truly value your staff and invest in their well-being. I think that's at the heart of everything. But let's start with diversity. And
just before you dive into that, what I forgot to say right at the start is we're going to take questions at the end, and if people want to pop stuff into the chat as we go through, that's great. We'll look at the comments when Heather's finished presenting. But
if anybody's still awake, sure.
Everybody's going to be fully awake. So back to you. Sorry for interrupting.
Not at all. For me, everything starts with people, and I hope that by sharing some of my experiences and my journey, I'll help maybe convince you to take a closer look at the world around you. And for the moment, I'm focusing on gender equality, but hopefully it'll give insight into how we can all fall into the trap and maybe be guilty of failing to see our environments through the eyes of others. And some of the things that I'll highlight today probably won't be relevant to your workplace, but I hope it gives you enough to go away and have a fresh look at maybe things that can be improved, and maybe things that your staff and your colleagues are experiencing that you hadn't considered before. So first of all, a little bit about me. I am a train driver. I've been a train driver for 16 years, 13 years driving with a passenger company, ScotRail, before moving on to become a freight train driver with Freightliner just over 3 years ago. And in doing so, as it says in the bio, and as I think it's going to go in my gravestone at this rate, I became the only female freight train driver in Scotland. So I get to drive, that's me, that's actually me there, I get to drive 10,000 brake horsepower locomotives and 2,000 tonne freight trains across the country. I'm exporting and importing vital supplies. I'm doing my bit for the economy and the environment. And as you can see in the photos there, my office view isn't too bad either. And not that I want to make anybody jealous, but how does yours compare to this? Because it's pretty phenomenal, and it's still pretty phenomenal to me. I genuinely can't say how proud it makes me feel to be entrusted with these trains. I mean, look at them. Can you imagine being at the front of that and seeing the look of awe on people's faces? And in the darkest days of the COVID crisis, we actually had people applauding as we passed through train stations and towns. It was just incredible. We were absolutely pivotal during the pandemic, and we are absolutely vital to our recovery from the pandemic. And at this crucial time for our environment, we are at the forefront of achieving a greener future. You'll have to forgive me as I give rail freight a little boost here, a promotion. But the closest I've ever come to going viral, whatever that means, was this photo that I posted a few months ago from the safety of my cab, I may add. And it's my train, my Freightliner train, looked across from the DRS Russell's train. And I think this image really brought it home to so many people, some for the first time, the impact that our trains have and the sheer importance of rail freight. It is an absolute privilege and honour to drive those trains and call myself not just a train driver, but a freight train driver. And what I'm genuinely trying to impress upon you is how much I love my job. In fact, I can honestly say I've never enjoyed what I do more than I do right now. And that's where the travesty lies for me, and the worry that it so nearly didn't happen. Now, I'm not easily intimidated, but even for the likes of myself, moving to freight seemed like a challenge too far. So the question I've got is how many other women are missing out in jobs and careers that they potentially love for similar reasons? How many girls and women are disregarding our industry? And it doesn't need to be train driving, it can be any aspect of our industry. And just as importantly, what are we missing out on by not having more women in our industry? So I want to talk about the potential barriers and influences that can hinder or encourage women, both within and out with our industry. And the only way that I can do that is to share my own journey. So why was it intimidating? What factors eventually led me to take the leap? The positives that I found, and what areas I feel that we still need to work on. So again, although I'm basing this on my rail freight experience, it's transferable to any like gender imbalanced workplace or male dominated workplace. So first of all, what was stopping me from making that jump? Why would I feel hesitant and even intimidated at the thought of moving to freight? So let's start with a couple of facts. The first one, women make up barely 1% of freight train drivers in the UK. And as you've heard, in Scotland, there were no women at all, and none ever for Freightliner in Scotland. So what kind of perception did this give me? It left me wondering if I would be met with hostility as I came in, or if I would be accepted. Maybe I would hear comments like, she shouldn't be here, or, you know, would I face confrontation? Would I cramp their style? Even things like, would it be dirty? Would there be even female toilets or female uniform? Will it be too physical, too hard? Is it all night shifts? And all these things make you question yourself and even your abilities. Would I even be able to drive locos? And it leaves you asking, can I do this? Or more importantly, do I even want to do this? It kind of left me feeling that there were just too many barriers, too many challenges. I'm in my 40s. Do I really want to have to prove myself again? Do I really want to work in that environment, in those conditions? And the simple answer was no, I didn't. So what changed my mind? What gave me courage? The first thing I did is I searched women in rail freight, and this image kept appearing at that time, bearing in mind this was 2018. So this is Debbie Francis, the then managing director of Freight Company Direct Rail Services. Now, prior to this moment, I would have told you that frontline staff like myself have very little interest in who their senior management are. I'd never realised before the impact and the influence that seeing a woman in the boardroom could have at someone at my level. And let's face it, I'd never realised it before because it was so bloody rare. But why was it important? Why was it not more important to see like female drivers in my search? And it's because whilst colleagues help create an atmosphere It's directors who create policy, culture and change. It's directors who dictate the environment in which we work in and ultimately how valued and understood we will feel. And this is why you will never achieve the diverse workforce that you want if your policy makers don't reflect the people you want to attract. So for me, when I was looking for a reason to either take the leap or run a mile, seeing a freight company with a female MD gave me the strength to send in my application for the vacancy that existed with Freightliner. So having made the decision, what's the reality? So let's start with the positives because there are loads. One, as you've probably already gathered, I have never enjoyed my work more than I do right now. I've never settled into a place of work quicker at any other time in my career. My depot is immaculate, it's professional, and it has all the facilities that I need. My colleagues and my manager were genuinely welcoming, supportive and encouraging. In fact, just over a year ago, for my sins, as I said, they actually elected me as their union official. None of that suggests she doesn't belong here. My company have made me feel that my views as a woman are valued, and the rail industry and freight industry as a whole have encouraged me to be more visible. In fact, that friendships and the experiences I've had in the last 3 years will live with me for a lifetime. It's genuinely the best decision that I've ever made. And my conclusion is, based on my experience, we are winning the battle against deliberate or conscious discrimination. There is no doubt that there is still work to be done and others don't have the same positive experiences, but my experience has been incredibly positive. I have not been subjected to any of the sexist comments or behaviours I'd been concerned about. My preconceptions and fears were totally unfounded. This is a job and an industry that so many women would love to be a part of, but are staying away because of their misconceptions. And I could finish right now and we could all kid ourselves that my positive experience is the full story. But I love this industry too much not to try and share some of the less positive realities of being a woman in this industry and in certain parts of it. But before I do that, I want to take a minute to hopefully get you to understand how hard it is for the likes of me or other frontline women or women in general to stand here or talk about equality and diversity. Because let's face it, if you are already a minority, whether that's based on gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or anything else, you already feel there is a huge spotlight on you. The last thing any of us want is to draw more attention to ourselves. I've always hated talk of equality and diversity. It made me feel really uncomfortable because from where we sit, the way to fit in is not to stand out. And if you want to be treated the same, you have to act the same, i.e. you get your head down and you get on with your job without bringing any attention to yourself. That's how you gain the respect and acceptance of colleagues. And after all, why should the industry have to change to accommodate us women? So what's happened that's not only changed my attitude, but it's also made me feel so strongly that I would risk potential backlash by putting myself out here and talking about things like this. So the first thing that made a big impact to me was that my employer invited me to attend the Women in Rail Awards in 2019. Now, prior to this, I would have told you that I kind of disagreed with events like this. I mean, how can you talk about inclusion and then have a women's event? I didn't really understand it, you know, but it was such a light bulb moment for me because in a room predominantly full of exceptional, strong, powerful and visible female leaders who had achieved great things without ever compromising who they were, you suddenly become aware of just how much you had been unconsciously conforming to fit in. When you're in an environment where suddenly you're able to truly be yourself, you see how much you've been adapting and almost hiding previously. And when we can't be our true selves at our work, we can't give as much or contribute as much. And I think that's when I realised this is what diversity is. It's not about the picture in the front of your company website or the yearly report. It's not about being treated the same. It's about having the same chances, opportunities, and the same experiences as others. Diversity is when we understand our different needs and we address them. It's not about getting special treatment. It's understanding that our environment was never designed with us in mind in the first place. Ultimately, it's about creating an environment where people are able to be themselves, and in doing so, these people are able to give so much more back. Events like Women in Rail give you that insight and strength. So having had my light bulb moment, I really wanted to find out more and find out if anyone in our industry had truly managed to create that kind of environment other than just on the front page of a company website. And this led me to Natasha Hanson, the then HR Director of Direct Rail Services. Now, incredibly, at that same Women in Rail Awards that I attended, DRS, a freight company, had just won Employer of the Year. Now, take that in for a moment. An industry where collectively fewer than 2% of its drivers are women had just won Best Employer at the Women in Rail Awards. How the hell was that possible? So I went online and I Googled Natasha and I found an interview and I watched it, and it absolutely blew me away. Her passion and her drive had created an environment where people thrived and where they were inspired and encouraged to be the best they can be for their benefit, but also for the benefit of her business. And it suddenly made me really sad that I'd spent so much of my working life hiding and being a lesser version of myself. And despite being a director for the competition, and I hope you all booed when I said the words Direct Rail Services because they are the competition, but despite that, Natasha had already reached out to me and offered me support and encouragement on Twitter. So I contacted her and I explained my fears. She made me read Invisible Woman, the book that you see on screen there. And please, if you remember one thing from this presentation, please remember to read that book. Not only will it give you an incredible insight into the unconscious discriminations faced by women, but it'll also make you consider what other unconscious discriminations exists for people of ethnicity and others that walk in different shoes to yourself. So Natasha educated me, she inspired me, she made me believe that I had something worth saying, hence you're stuck with listening to me droning on today. But I still didn't realise just how important it was for people like myself to see directors like Natasha speak out so passionately for equality and inclusion. In fact, I really didn't get it until I heard she'd left the rail industry. And I'll never forget sitting along at Coatbridge Terminal, not far from where I start, in the cold and in the dark, ready to leave. And suddenly I felt really emotional and so alone. I barely knew this woman. I'd met her once at the time. And yet for the first time, I was suddenly questioning whether I had a future in a job and in an industry that I absolutely love. So why was that? Why were the amazing and the supportive men that I worked with not enough? Because I do work with incredible men. And it's simple. It's because the kindest and most supportive of male allies cannot design a railway that works equally well for women any more than I could go and design a house that works for someone that's visually impaired. We can guess, but we don't know what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes. People like me need to know that there's someone out there willing to speak up for our different needs. And because no matter how grateful I am to have made the genuine friendships that I have, it's simply not healthy to spend your entire working life, oops, sorry, that's the doorbell. It's simply not healthy to spend your entire working life surrounded by only men. And I'll tell you something else, it's not healthy for men either, because gender equality isn't just about women and what we need. It's also about what we bring and what we add. A few months ago, I walked into the mess room at Crewe, and for the first time in over 2 years, there was a woman in there, Steph. The energy and atmosphere was transformed. The men were engaged, they were laughing, and they were happier. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about men's mental health in a little while, but it's important that you recognise the role that women play in helping create that more open environment. And that's what diversity brings. And that's why when DRS were winning Employer of the Year for women, they were also achieving their highest ever employee opinion results. It's why sickness levels plummeted and staff retention levels rocketed. Because when you create an environment that women will excel in, you create an environment that everyone will excel in. Because Everything you want to achieve as a business has to start with your people, and people need diversity to bring their true selves to work and perform at the best. So all that said, where are we failing? Unconscious or indirect discrimination. The world has been created by men for men. Now, please believe me when I said that's not said with any bitterness or accusation. But the reality is that our environment was created with the assumption that it would be men undertaking these roles. And as long as women continue to quietly adapt and conform, then these unconscious discriminations will continue to go unnoticed. So what kind of things are we talking about? And I have to stress, these examples aren't aimed at any one organisation. These are examples that I've either witnessed or people have approached me and told me about, but consider them for a moment. Uniforms and PPE that simply don't fit. Newsflash, unisex doesn't exist. It's menswear with a label changed. It's simply not acceptable in this day and age to hand women safety gear that was designed for the average man and then expect her to believe that you value her safety as much. You try coupling up a loco with sleeves down to your fingers and gloves bent over. Or when safety boots start from a size 6 or 7, you've immediately excluded around 80% of the female population. We've got locals in cabs that were designed based on the average height of 5'9", again, the average height of a man. The safe method of working for me to climb down from my loco is to leave my bag sitting on the floor of the cab, climb down the steps and then reach up and bring my bag down after me. This method is guaranteed to cause injury to the average woman, and yet we would be pulled up if not seen to be following the correct and safe method of working. And it's not just because of our lack of height that has us overreaching, but it's our very different upper body strengths. And I hear the comments already with people saying, so do you expect us to redesign every loco and train just because women have suddenly decided they want to drive trains? And of course not. But actually the question you should be asking is, why were these design flaws not picked up in the first place? And it's because women weren't involved in the first place. If you create an environment that doesn't work for 50% of the population, then why are we surprised when women turn their back on our industry? So we can't go back in time, but we do need to learn and we do need to stop making these same mistakes. Hitachi now make cabs that work for all heights and builds, so it can be done and it must be done moving forward. But these little unseen things just keep adding up and send these messages that you don't belong or you're just not worth considering. How about this one, male-only toilets? Yes, there still exists mess rooms with no female or unisex toilets. It's humiliating and it's embarrassing. In some locations where they maybe have provided female portaloos, it's probably a 10-minute walk from the mess room. Now that's 10 minutes each way. That's a big chunk of the female's break, whilst the male toilets are in the mess room. And these toilets are often locked, and the key is held by a shift supervisor, a man, who these women have to go and find and ask for a key. Now, I've not had to ask to use the toilet since I was in primary school. These women damn well shouldn't have to do it at their work. If you wouldn't expect to put up with that in an office environment, then we shouldn't expect our frontline employees to put up with that in their mess rooms. Now, I raised this at a general union meeting recently, and afterwards one of the men from that depot approached me. He was genuinely horrified and embarrassed. He was embarrassed because despite working in that depot, he had never taken in the fact that his female colleagues had no toilet. He hadn't seen it because we rarely see beyond our own needs. There are simply too many examples of unconscious bias or indirect discrimination to list them all, but I guarantee there will be many in your own place of work and you've not seen them. And whether that be affecting women or people of different cultures, they will exist. And this brings me full circle to why we need diversity in boardrooms. Because if that genuine and decent man who worked in that place where the female toilets didn't exist, didn't see that, how the hell could we expect a male director to even know to ask that question? It's not deliberate, and we will all be guilty at times of being completely ignorant to the needs of others. But these women will not raise these issues with you. They don't want to be accused of wanting special treatment or causing trouble. You need to proactively ask these questions. But how do you even know what questions to ask? And that's why I felt suddenly alone when Natasha Hansen left our industry. Because in her, we had someone who saw all these little things that can add up to make women feel less like outsiders or less valued. And we still have many fantastic female leaders in our industry, but by God, every time we lose a Natasha or a Debbie Francis, it does leave me questioning whether our industry is truly committed to making the changes needed. I originally had a slide with some recommendations here, but I deleted it because I don't want people to leave with tick lists. I want you to leave and take a look for yourself with fresh eyes, and I want you to make it personal. This is me and my dad just about to come up, and I'm glad that you're all on mute so you're not laughing. He worked in the railway for over 45 years and he sadly died before I joined the rail industry. And people continually tell me that he'd be so proud to see me driving these trains. And I know that he would be. But if that little girl had told him that she wanted to join the rail industry, he'd have said no. He'd have been horrified at her coming into an environment that he knew wouldn't be fit for her. And as I've highlighted today, things have changed massively for the better. But not all experiences are as positive as mine, and we are still expecting women to adapt. So take a look at these other photos. Do you see your own family there? And ask yourself honestly, if your daughter or niece or granddaughter wanted to enter your part of the industry, would you be happy for her or worried for her? Would you be happy if she faced any of these situations? And can you, hand on heart, say that she definitely won't? And if the honest answer is no, then you need to do something to change that. Because I'm telling you right now, someone you love will want to do this. And they damn well deserve to, because it's a fantastic job and it's a fantastic industry. So don't go away from here thinking about targets and figures. Think about helping to create an environment that you'd be proud to have someone that you care about working in. Create an environment that doesn't just bring women in, but it means they want to stay. Because if you create that environment, then all of your people benefit and thrive. And your business thrives as a result. And that's diversity. Now that's been a wee overlook at gender balance and equality. But diversity and inclusion covers so many other groups of people. Most people will experience some kind of prejudice at some point in their life. Ageism, for example, and it's not nice. So take the time to consider some of the things that you perhaps take for granted in your life, and imagine walking the shoes of others who face fear of prejudice every single day, whether that be for their age, their ethnicity, or even because they've got some kind of mental illness that they are scared to share. Late last year, my partner Sharon and I attended the Pride March in Glasgow. And Sharon's closest friend of 53 years came with us. She'll kill me for giving away their ages. But her friend Pauline, she was absolutely loving the atmosphere and the colours. She had her rainbow hat on. She had her I'm not gay but I'm very supportive t-shirt on. She was having a fantastic time. But suddenly she stopped and seemed a bit upset. And it's because she realised that in the 53 years since she'd known her best friend, this was the first time she'd ever seen her holding hands with someone in public. It's not something she'd been aware of till that moment, and it suddenly hit her. All the things that she took for granted with her husband, her best friend that she loved, felt afraid of. Fear of the stigma, fear of abuse, fear of attack. Holding hands, a kiss, and even the simplest act of booking a double room can cause such anxiety. And only now, with overwhelming sadness, did she realise that the friend she loved so much had never felt comfortable to do any of these things that she'd taken for granted. And then she looked at the other people in the march, suddenly wondering how many others were experiencing a rare moment of being their true selves. We seldom walk in the shoes of others, and it's so important to consider how prejudice affects people in ways that we take for granted. Because for every loud, proud and out gay person you've ever come across, there are hundreds of thousands hiding and scared. For every strong black man or woman you've seen leading a march or championing a campaign, There are millions who quietly accept door after door being shut in their face. And for every outspoken, powerful woman you have met, there are thousands too scared to speak up. And no, we can't be experts in the prejudices or ignorances that others face, but we can choose to open our eyes and we can choose to ask questions. So don't be the person who shouts, "Where are the men in real events?" Or "She only got that job because she's a woman." Be the person who asks himself what it must feel like to continually be the only female voice in a sea of men. Or choose to read Invisible Women and get angry that your wife or your daughter is more likely to die in a car crash because safety measures like seatbelts and airbags are designed and tested for men. Don't be the person that shouts, "Where are the straight trains and the straight colours?" Be the person who realises the strength a scared and confused LGBT plus member might gain from that public show of support, and consider what it might be like to be too scared to publicly show affection to the person you love. Don't be the person that shouts, "White lives matter too," when you haven't the slightest idea how the colour of your skin affects how you might be treated on a daily basis. Sure, most of us now have better appreciation of the challenges a colleague might face during Ramadan, but do you know how different cultures mourn the loss of a loved one and the physical strains that might be causing them over weeks and months? Do you know which colleagues might be celebrating Diwali and when it is? Because I didn't, but I'm choosing to ask the questions. So don't be the person who rolls their eyes and claims that the minority groups are pandered to. Be the person who starts to appreciate the things you've always taken for granted. Ask questions, choose to be an ally, and choose to care. Because I'll say it again, diversity and inclusion is not about being treated the same, and it isn't about getting special treatment. Diversity is when we understand our different needs and we address them. And ultimately, it's about creating an environment where people are able to be themselves. And in doing so, those people are able to give so much more back. I will keep repeating that time and time again. How can you expect to get the best out of someone when they leave a huge part of who they are at home? That's why I'm so passionate about well-being and about employers who invest in their staff and who see the value in creating a great place to work for their teams and for their business. And that brings me to mental health, because it's another area that so many people feel unable to be open about. And that impacts massively on them personally, but it also impacts massively on the business. Now, this is a subject that I've personally been affected by, but that became even more important to me when just almost 8 years ago, a teenage boy chose to use my train to end his life. Now, not a day passes when I don't think about him and wonder what he could be doing now. I chose to find out a bit about him and discovered that he was a popular guy. He had a family who loved him deeply and good friends. And it brings it home to you that this could affect any one of us. It could be someone that we love. It scared me, especially when my GP at the time told me how common it was, especially in men. Now, as we've already touched upon, the last 3 years I've worked entirely with men, and it's made me even more aware and concerned about the well-being of men in a society where they're expected to carry their own burdens silently. And it's pushed me to try and do more and encourage others to do so. And again, I have to stress, I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not a qualified counsellor. I'm just a train driver talking rubbish at times. But I think that's the whole point of what I'm trying to say today, is that you don't have to be an expert to make a massive difference to the people around you. Mental health isn't just about politicians and experts. We all have a huge part to play to change our society for the better. And it isn't just about men's mental health, but just as we recognise that women need allies to help with visibility and educating others on unconscious bias, it's so important to recognise that men have different needs when it comes to their mental health. Now, there are no buzzwords, there's no fancy statements. It's about the simple things that each and every one of us could do, which could ultimately save lives. But this isn't a presentation on suicide, though we do touch on it. There are so many things that can be done long before someone starts to consider ending their life. So let's look at some of the statistics. So that's not any surprise to us. Depression, stress and anxiety are the largest cause of sickness in the UK. 72 million working days lost each year. Twice as many women suffer from depression and anxiety than men. But out of that horrendous figure of suicides in the UK, 75% were men. Now, another shocking figure, 60% of the rail industry staff have experienced mental ill health, and suicide rates within the rail industry is 1.6 times higher than the national average. Now, we'll come back to some of those statistics, but few of us will fail to appreciate why mental health is so important and why we can't continue to ignore it. Now, the reason that my camera is currently off is because I am overweight and unfit, and I don't like seeing myself back in the mirror. Now, potentially, if I kept going down this path, it could ultimately lead to a heart attack or serious health concerns. But that's not why I want to lose weight and get fitter. I want to change because it affects the quality of my life for the worse on a daily basis. I want to be able to run for and catch a bus or a train. I want to chase the dog round the park. I want to feel better about myself, and I want to enjoy my life better. Mental health is no different. Just because today you aren't considering suicide doesn't mean that your mental health couldn't be better, enabling you to enjoy life more. I've experienced spells of depression and anxiety, and it can be devastating. Mental health affects all of our lives daily, just like physical health does. Think about a time you were feeling stressed, anxious, worried or depressed. It massively increases the chances of you snapping at your kids, arguing with your partner, shouting at the dog, or making a mistake at work or whilst driving your car. The more the mind has going on inside, the less room it has to deal with these other situations. We become less tolerant. But would you recognise these signs in yourself? Now, when it happened to me, I didn't. I genuinely thought everyone else was just getting more annoying, or that maybe I was just getting older and less willing to put up with things. But actually, my mind was so busy trying to process and deal with things that were causing me stress that it didn't have room for everyday challenges and situations. My personality was slowly changing and I didn't even see it. So what kind of things should you look out for in yourself and in others? And what can we do about it when we recognise these things? So obviously, talking and sharing are to mental health what diet and exercise are to physical health. But if you see someone lacking energy or feeling tired, feeling agitated and irritable, feeling it's hard to cope with everyday things, or not wanting to enjoy the things that you usually enjoy, maybe a change in appearance, or avoiding people. These are all signs that something's not right, and you need to recognise them in yourself first and foremost, and you need to look out for them in the people around you. And again, it's okay to talk. As I've said, talking and sharing are to mental health what diet and exercise are to physical. But how do we do that? It's not difficult. Ask someone how they are. Don't be scared to tell them you're worried about them, that you've noticed they don't seem like themselves. We've all had the "how are you" question where you're expected to answer "I'm fine, how are you?" Make sure that the person really knows you want to hear the answer. And if you manage to get someone talking and starting to share, encourage them, but don't be tempted to fill in the blanks. Just listen, let them talk. I used to think I was a fantastic listener because I always felt I had an example in my life that could show that I sympathised or empathised, but actually, the less you talk, the better. Put your phone away, give them your full attention, keep eye contact. These are all ways to show that you're listening and that you care. Don't judge and don't try to solve their problems. Often one of the main reasons that we're scared to ask someone what's wrong is because we fear we don't know the answers. We don't need to know the answers. Just by allowing someone to share their worries, their fears, their stress can be the most incredible relief. It helps gain perspective for them. It gives them strength and a sense of relief that they've finally got it off their chest. And ultimately, it can help us feel more able to deal with the problem. All you need to do is listen without judgment. You don't need to know the answers. You don't need to be a counsellor. All you need to do is show you care. So back at these headlines, women are twice as likely to suffer from depression and anxiety as men. And yet out of 6,200 suicides, 75% were men. Why is that? And for me, it's because women are far more likely to deal with their worries and stresses through talking and sharing. Men don't, which is why often sometimes the smallest trigger can be what finally pushes them past the point of what they can cope with. I really like this cartoon. I think it sums it up perfectly, that often from the outside, the problem, or in this case, that tiny step, seems so simple and easy, but what has gone before makes it seem unsurmountable. It could be an unpaid bill or a silly argument, a criticism or comment from a friend or colleague, or a social media post. In one case, I heard someone explain that when standing in the supermarket, their breaking point was trying to decide which cereal to buy. Imagine what you must be carrying internally for such simple things to break you. These are the moments where people can decide life is too hard. These are the people that we can save. So please, let's change our environment and our society and start talking and listening to each other. And what if you do feel someone is showing signs that they're vulnerable? All you need to do is care enough to ask. Give the people around you a safe place where they know they will be listened to, without judgment. There is something very inbuilt in our society that makes us scared to appear nosy or scared to interfere. We think if someone is going through something, the best thing to do is pretend we haven't noticed so not to embarrass them. That has to end. Don't be scared to ask difficult questions. I'm worried about you. What's wrong? And even, have you contemplated self-harm or suicide? Yes, these words are not banned. Even if the person has not considered it, you've removed the taboo around the subject and they know you're someone that they can talk to in the future. And if you discover they need more than a chat, I'll go over some of the support available. We've got some railway chaplains here today, some of the greatest support that we've got available to us. And even if you don't know the person, yes, it can make it hard, but you'll not make that person's situation worse. What are they going to do? Tell you to mind your own business? Or maybe you're a man scared to approach a lone woman for fear of how it might look. But please take the chance. If they're uncomfortable, you respect that and you walk away, but at least they will know that someone has cared enough to check on them. And if you get them talking, it doesn't matter if you talk about the weather, the football, the colour of their shoes. Small talk really does save lives, in the words of the Samaritans. Anything to snap them out of where their mind might be at in that moment. And again, don't be scared to ask the questions. You seem upset. What's wrong? If you can get them talking, again, listen without judgment. Don't be worrying about what you're going to say or how you're going to get them help. Just be with them in that moment. Give them your full attention and let them talk. If this person was suicidal, your actions have probably already saved their life. Suicide can often be a momentary decision that can be wiped out simply by a stranger smiling at them in passing, but it's important that you know what support is available. Depending on a person's situation or personality, different organisations or options offer different solutions. So quickly, I'm going to highlight a few that I've come across. So we've got Andy's Man Club. It's a fantastic organisation which have meetings throughout the UK for men only. A place where men can just go to have a chat, talk about football, money, problems. There's never any pressure put on them to talk. They can also arrange to come to your place of work to introduce themselves. Sometimes the last people that men want to talk to are the people closest to them. So this is a place where men can go and just hear from other like-minded people. The phenomenal, incredible railway chaplains are an amazing resource for us, and yet still so many are scared to pick up the phone and contact them. These people know our environment. They are first and foremost railway. They will listen without judgment and they ask for nothing in return. Find out who your railway chaplain is. Keep their number and email in your phone. Wherever you are, time, day or night, the Samaritans are available to listen and offer support. The phone number's free. It doesn't show up in your phone bills. If you believe you're dealing with someone that's vulnerable, try and encourage them to contact the Samaritans. I love this company. For a lot of people, the thought of picking up the phone and trying to explain to someone how they're feeling is just too overwhelming. but this is a great source where you just need to text and have a conversation with somebody over a text. The Hub of Hope, I've heard great things about this, and I've looked at it myself. It's got loads of resources of locally sourced companies and places that can help. Breathing Space, for anyone watching from Scotland, take a note of this, number 2. Fantastic organisation that are at the end of the phone, able to listen and help you. Just to summarise, get to know yourself so that you can recognise when you're low. Tell friends when you're low so that they know you need a bit of extra support. Get to know your friends and colleagues so that you can notice when something's not quite right with them. And as I keep saying, you don't need to be a counsellor, you don't need to notice. You just need to take notice and care. Here's a wee summary of some of the places that I'd love for you to try and keep a little note of. Again, we've mentioned the Samaritans, but please, we're all on the railway here. If you've not already done so, ask your manager about attending the Managing Suicidal Conversations course that the Samaritans run. Although it's intended to help you identify and approach potentially vulnerable people, it's actually packed with information and guidance that you'll carry with you every day. I'm a far better listener as a result of attending that course. It's free and it only takes 3 hours. Again, Andy's Man Club there. Get your company to get them in and do an in-person or online chat to show how you can help. Get leaflets put up in your workplaces and mess rooms. Railway missions. Contact them now, get to know them now before you need them, so that when you do need to phone them, that phone call becomes a bit easier. Consider becoming a mental health first aider. It's an incredible course that will provide you with all the knowledge and skills you need to recognise or approach someone in difficulty. And crucially, it teaches you when and how to pass that person on. I did this course with Wendy McChrystal's amazing company, the Mental Wealth Company, and it was run by the fantastic Andy Elwood. So look them up, follow them on LinkedIn, follow people like Railway Chaplains Mike Roberts and Graham that's on here today on Twitter if you don't already. And Loose Men, I recently became aware of the fantastic Loose Men discussion panel that John runs. What a fantastic idea. You know, consider getting involved in that and finding ways to advance that. You might not need any of this right now, but put it in place so that it's there when you or someone you care about does need it. And again, for me, all I'm asking you to do is choose to care. There's some contact worth noting there, but we can get those emailed out as and when we do so. My final point, I know I'm sure John's sitting looking at his watch there, but my final point today is that our industry is facing its biggest challenge for decades. There will be greater financial scrutiny and more difficult decisions than any of our leaders have ever faced. Employee well-being can no longer be seen as a luxury as it once was. It is absolutely essential that it must be your #1 priority, because your greatest assets are your people. They are the key to the success of your business and this industry. We must value them. I'm not just talking about frontline, I'm talking about every level within your organisation. Be brave enough to get real feedback, ask the hard questions, talk to the people that it affects. Understand that the people who are best at their jobs often don't equate to the people who are best at managing others. Don't automatically promote based on performance. Of course, those people deserve reward, but you need to promote those who are going to bring out the best in others around them and below them. Communicate. The greatest way to show your staff that they're irrelevant is to not even consider them worthy of communication. It doesn't matter how little you know. Keep them in the loop. As a train driver, I often had very little I could tell passengers about delays or disruption, but taking the time to speak to them always resulted in receiving far more cooperation and understanding. It's human nature. So if you expect to treat your customers with that level of respect, why would you not treat your staff in the same way? Enable them to bring their true selves to work. If they feel the need to hide any part of who they are, whether that be their sexuality, their culture, their gender, or their mental health challenges, then how can you expect to get 100% of their potential? Support and nurture them to be the best they can be. Inspire them. Don't create policies from behind closed doors. As Natasha Hansen said in the earlier quote, listen to your people, they are your experts. Don't create a barrier between you and your people. Engage at all levels, including your front line. People like Natasha earn the cooperation, support and trust from staff and unions because she creates a great place to work for her employees. She sees that bringing out the best in her people produces huge benefits for them, but also for her company and her customers, financially and in reputation. In fact, my favourite quote that I heard Natasha and Debbie Francis say is this one at the end: look after your people and they will look after your business. I think that sums it up perfectly. The bottom line is, if you think you can't afford to look after your staff, I'd argue that you can't afford not to. LNER and Hitachi, who are on this slide here, are two excellent examples of companies who put their people at the heart of everything they do, and they reap the benefits. Now, more than ever, you need your workforce to produce for you, to go the extra mile from you, and this is what you get from people who value and respect who they work for. That's why this week in the storm disruption, when I was travelling as a passenger, there was a sea of red LNER uniforms everywhere I went. Not one single person was hiding. No one was avoiding eye contact. Each and every one of them were engaging with passengers and going over and above to find solutions for them. That's priceless, and that's what you get when you value your staff. Another quote that's on here that I came across just last night is from Debbie Francis's new company, Ripple Effect, helping business succeed through their people. It's fantastic, because everything you want to achieve as a business has to start with your people. So I'll finish with what I said earlier, that when DRS were winning Employer of the Year for women, they were also achieving their highest ever employee opinion results. Their sickness levels plummeted, their staff retention and morale levels rocketed, performance targets were exceeded. Because when you create that environment where your people feel valued, you create an environment that everyone will excel in, and your business and our industry will benefit as a result. That's diversity, that's inclusion, that's well-being, and that's how you get the best out of your people. And I hope some of that made sense, and I'm sorry I went on for so long, but thanks for your time.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. I think we all found that hugely inspirational.
Is anybody still awake?
Yeah, everybody's still awake. There's no question. We're all awake. Yeah, just an incredible presentation. I'll just open it up for any questions that people have got. We've had lovely comments in the chat. People saying fantastic story, Heather. Really glad I joined this session. Very inspiring. Definitely the best wellness session I've attended. Thank you, Heather. So yeah, amazing oration, impactful and awesome perception. Gets me thinking about what we take for granted. Really very powerful.
I mean, I really apologise if it was kind of self-indulgent, but it's just, you know, in this time, I still think there is such a separation between the front line and every aspect of the business, and we need to change that. We need to, from our perspective as well, we need to stop this them and us attitude. We need to start understanding what each and every one of us does, and really starting to work together. And I say that, as I say, as a bloody damn union rep these days.
So people must have questions they'd like to ask or comments they'd like to give. So just open the floor up. If anybody wants to fire away, that would be great. Don't be shy.
See, John, they're sleeping. I've put them to sleep.
No, they're not sleeping.
Either that is that this Scottish accent was just too much.
As an Englishman, I understood every word, Heather.
Thanks, Graham. But you've been up here so long that would be a given.
I suppose so. I've learned to quickly translate in my head. I think, actually, you talked about it being self-indulgent, but it's not. What you did was you relayed the real world to the rest of us. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
It was just because you're saying it from the heart, it's just so authentic. And you mentioned at the start, you know, you're not an expert, but you don't have to be an expert to actually relay this, and you put it in language that we can understand, and it's just so very powerful. It's quite, you have an amazing story and an absolute inspiration for our whole industry. I think it's brilliant. I've made a note to get Invisible Woman. I haven't read that, so that's on my reading list. So looking forward to reading that.
As I said, when I read that, it made me realise that if I, as a woman, didn't realise how many ways I was being indirectly discriminated against, how the hell can you expect men to get it? You know, it really opens your eyes up to what, and see the world in a different way. And it also made me realise that, again, if that's how it's indirect discrimination is affecting women, then what mistakes am I making, you know, that's impacting on other people and other cultures? And it really makes you see things in a different way.
It does. And you mentioned Black Lives Matter, and some people have challenged me, go, what about don't white lives matter? And go, where's the fire?
Yeah.
Where's the fire?
We had that conversation, exactly.
Have you gone into a store and been given a look like you shouldn't be there, that sort of thing? Have people said sort of stuff that sort of undermines you? And it's just making us all think, are we coming over in a way that helps us all flourish and be the very best versions of ourselves? And for me, if we celebrate difference in uniqueness, but wrapped up in a caring environment, well, actually where we genuinely care and look out for each other, then you create a culture where everybody can shine, which is just great for any organisation you work for. And it's something we need to continue to work at. And
it's like you say, but we've all got such potential, and I mean, I do these kind of things, and prior to the last couple of years, I turned up, did my job, and went home. And that's what happens when you choose to nourish your staff and value them. You get more. You get staff that go over and above. And as I said, it's why the other day when I was out in that disruption, there was a sea of LNER staff out there to help, because you get more out of your people when you show that to them.
Yeah. So a lovely comment from Tom, just saying, got to drop off, but this has been wonderful, Heather. Thank you so much. Hugely appreciating the time you've taken to do this. Rosemary, I'm so lost for words of what you've done, and thank you once again.
Thank you.
Victoria, you talk from the heart. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, we're also appreciative. I'm very keen that we share this video. So that Mike's very good at sharing videos on his Twitter feed, so hopefully he can do that, or perhaps Graham can as well. I'll send the recording to you. I'm trying to get it in a format where it can be shared. I'm
not as practiced as Mike. Mike is.
He just does it. Just
he's impressive on Twitter.
I think he does it in his sleep, even.
Yeah, he does. But I'll give it a go. Definitely give it a go.
But I think many more people should see this recording than have been on today's call, because I think it will inspire many people to challenge themselves.
Thanks so much for asking me and for listening. I really do appreciate it, and the feedback means more to me than I can say, because it's difficult to come on and do this and wonder if you're kind of, who does she think she is type of thing. So it really does mean a lot to me.
You're very natural in how you come over. It's utterly inspiring. I think you touched all of our hearts, everybody on today's call. So I think you should be really proud of what you've achieved in your life to date and what you're doing to help other people. I think it's magnificent, absolutely magnificent. And the shout outs you've done for Andy Mann's Club, for the Railway Chaplains, for my Loose Men panel, all of that. We're all very grateful. So
thanks to you, John, for everything you're doing. It really does make such a huge difference, and thanks for involving me in it. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to turn the recording off just in case anybody wants to raise anything they don't want to have recorded. There you go.